The brown van. My van was the first brown van. Steve had the black van, I had the brown van. And we went to many concerts in that van. And it was great. And he shaped my life in so many ways. And I think when everybody in this room really thinks about their interactions with Steve, they're going to say, wow, that really changed this, or this altered that. And there's a lot of fun stories and partying stories. And there's a lot of like sitting in his garage at Lizette, just 2 a.m. talking about what he hopes, or you guys hope to achieve in your life. And he was that kind of guy. I mean, I've never, ever asked Steve for help. And he said no. Not once. He was always there for me. And I respect him for that. And we all miss him. And he misses us. He wishes he was here right now. But he would have hated the suit. I gotta tell you. He would have hated, he wasn't a suit guy. He was, like everyone in this room, just casual, enjoying life, whatever. It's not about how you look, it's what you do in life. And when Linda and I were thinking about a lot of things about Steve and his life and, putting it in the line or putting it on, his handout, make sure everybody here gets a handout, please. They're out there where you signed in. And it's got some great pictures of Steve, when he grew up, as well as when he was in Nashville, as well as when he was, with O'Neill and on Lizette and with his family. There's just some great memories there, and I just make sure you get that. We also have a digital version that my wife's putting together. I don't have the bandwidth for that, God bless, and she's awesome for that. So we'll send that out as well. But he would have hated the tie too, I have to say. He hated the tie, he hated the suit, but he would have liked the couplings, because the couplings to the bracelet were rock, and that was him, and he was music, and he influenced me from the minute I met him. And the minute I charged him 25 cents to leave a message with me, so I would tell my brother to call him back. And that's the kind of, not everybody knows that here, but my brother's Scott Menslage. My name is Kurt Menslage. And my brother's name is Scott Menslage. And Scott was, one of Steve's best friends, if not his best friend. And Scott lives in Cape Cod right now.
He's on the phone.
He's here. He hears us?
I hope. He is.
Scott, do you hear this?
Scotty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Can you
Scott's
hear us?
hearing this. So
I didn't hear what you just said for the last couple of minutes.
Okay, it's good you missed it.
you can put it right here. This little thing right here holds a phone.
Oh.
And if you want to FaceTime him, he can see the whole crowd if you just put him right there.
Oh my God.
I know.
I'm on like 10%.
I overthink everything. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's good.
I'm on 10%. Okay, so have him face the crowd?
Yeah, put him up here and have him,
Okay.
see everybody.
Can you
It's
see
type C.
everybody? It's not. Scotty.
Scotty.
Mom, I hope you realize that your phone is backwards and am I not?
I don't know.
Camera's back around.
He's just looking at Kurt.
Oh, can you see
There we go.
everybody? Okay. How you doing, Scotty? Okay, so I'm gonna, I guess, put you like that.
Oh, no, he's looking at me now. Have him go that way.
Okay. Someone else do it.
All right.
No, it's not.
I know.
He's
He's
looking
looking
at
at your
you
jacket.
We're gonna get
Turned around like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the back
Well, I mean, you could
camera's
turn
turned
around the whole thing.
Okay, so we do that, because I just,
He's like, I don't know what I'm
Just
doing.
have Andrew do it.
Complicated.
you can put this in the back of it if it's not, Okay. So my brother Scott, he's friends with most people in this room who knew Steve. And I was the 3-year-old younger brother, like I said, who charged him $0.25 for messages. Sorry. And Scott, go ahead, Scott.
Phone's gonna die. Do you have it? No.
Cutting out.
Oh,
I think his phone just died.
sorry.
Come back. Someone
phone's
come
dead.
back.
Anyway, so Scott wanted to be here.
Phone's up.
And I love my brother, and his son, who is a Green Beret, is shipping off to Afghanistan in 5 days. So he couldn't come.
Right.
So please give him a pass for not being here.
Oh, yeah.
I know I did. But anyways, my brother was one of Steve's best friends, if not his best friend. And he would be giving the speech if he was here. And Steve affected my brother's life in so many ways, from start to finish. And they were going to go into business together. They dated some of the same girls. They went to high school together. They were inseparable, from my brother living on Kenny Drive to Steve living on Lizette. And many of his friends here who were from the Lizette crowd and that area of Granada Hills helped shape many people's lives. And Steve was instrumental in that. And Steve was the kind of guy where you just met him, and I know for me, like, I just kind of wanted to like be like him. Like I said, like my first car was because he had a van, I had a van. He liked Triumph, I liked Triumph. He liked Rush, I liked Rush. Sorry. So I think when we all think about it, when we really dig deep down, you're going to see where the simplest of interactions with Steve, he changed you in the smallest way, but he changed you for a positive and effective way, and it altered your life for the better. And I look at like Tom, for example, who's one of his climbing buddies, and I did so many random things with Steve. I went climbing with Tom up in Talkeets Rock, out by, just south of Mammoth, and I'm like, what am I doing out here? It's hotter than heck, and it's, not me. And it was one of my best memories. I went climbing, and maybe it wasn't Talkeets, I'm sorry, because I think maybe Talkeets was somewhere local. What was the place by?
Idlewild.
I don't know, what was the place just south of Mammoth, on the way like Bishop? Owens Gorge, okay. So that, we went there, but Steve and I went to Talkeets Rock, which was a simple 2-hour climb, and he brought this much water, which means I brought this much water. And I was out of water before I even got to the mountain. And I gotta tell you, I have never in my life been more thirsty in my life. Going up for 3 hours up, and he could have done it in an hour, but it took us 3 hours because of me. But we came down, and I was dying, and we went to a garden hose, and that was like drinking out of whatever, Perrier. I mean, it was the greatest experience. But Steve would get you to do things that you normally wouldn't just say yes. You have to think, if you thought about it, you'd probably say no, be like, come on, let's go, and you just do it. And whether you liked it or not, it was for your better. You learned from it, you experienced it, you loved it, you remember it. And I remember so many things, and I'll get into some more stories later, but one thing I want to again invite is everybody here who has a story about Steve, if you wouldn't mind passing it along after the video, and Rick Flapper, one of his best childhood friends, is going to step up and say a few words. But think about what you want to say, and it's not always about being crazy. It's not always about having fun, but those are great stories. But just what Steve meant to you, because I think when you really think about it, he meant a lot to you. Come on up, Rick. That light down, so you don't have to- He's like me.
I'm not the gifted orator. I'm not the gifted orator like Kurt is here, but I'll try. I'm Rick Flapper, Steve's friend.
Little closer to my butt.
Then you gotta go up.
Raise that hand, loose the middle. Don't worry about it. There you go. There you go.
That's all it goes. That's all you got.
Oh, shit.
Oh no, it's a little bit raised.
I grew up with
Steve would
Steve
do a
on
better
Lizette
job.
Street with his parents and my parents, molding us what we are, for better or for worse. Steve's dad was VP of Fredericks of Hollywood. So maybe where Steve got some of his flair, perhaps. And Steve's mom would later become the credit manager at Gemco, where Steve would also have a short career as a shoe salesman. My earliest memories of Steve were from preschool, which Steve and I were recently talking about, actually. And he reminded me I pushed some kid out of the treehouse. I remember the treehouse, but I don't remember pushing the kid out of it. So the treehouse, it And we were probably 4 years old, so at 4 years old, it probably seemed like it was that high, but the treehouse was probably only about that high, I'm guessing. Let's see. And, growing up, Mr. Werbelow would take us to Dodger games, Rams games, Laker games. My parents not really being a sports fan, I probably might still have never been to one, but it was a cool experience with the different backgrounds of both our parents and the shared experiences that we had together. I still remember Mrs. Werbelow watching Laker games at the house and just yelling at the TV, something I'd never seen. She was into her Lakers, that is for sure. So, a brilliant idea that Steve and I had during summer school between kindergarten and first grade was to ditch a class. We had 2 classes, an art class and a wood shop. But wood shop turned out mostly into like calisthenics and jumping jacks. So me and Steve weren't too into that. And some girl, she wasn't in class one day and she had told us that she had gone to a movie. So we thought, oh, you can get out of this school thing. So our brilliant reasoning, of course, what we thought was the weak link in our plan was Stephen had ridden his bicycle to school, so we had to get the bicycle out of school we went to the first class, but failed for the second one. And then somebody questioned us going out of the gate, and Stephen in a panic, they're like, where are you going? Steve's like, we're going to a movie. We bailed, and we had our little art supplies with us, and we went to the creek, kind of near where Van Gogh was, and we made God's eyes in the park, and we thought we had this all figured out. And then we went into the field, and then I don't know if some of you guys remember Tom Houlihan, who, right? He was a big guy. He must have been like a 4th grader, and he stole Stephen's bike, the one with the banana seat, the 5 speeds, and so we're wandering around the field, and then there's my mom off the back hill, and she sees us. And the jig is up. It's all over. But for some reason, we rationed that 2 5-year-olds wouldn't be missed at the school. Didn't think that all through. But then I was pissed at Steve because the next day, of course, we had to go back to school. But Stephen was leaving to Canada to go see his Auntie Whirlybird and his grandma. So I had to face the wrath alone with my kindergarten teacher and his kindergarten teacher. And I remember being so pissed off at Steve that he got to bail. Kind of like now, for me standing up here. So, yeah. I mean, I could tell sorts of stories for days, but I mean, Steve's lifelong passion was hoses, wires. Obviously, he has a display. I remember even, now he's my brother-in-law, he gave me 2 fire hoses. And of course, Steve fire hoses, so of course I gave him one and I had one, and we would hook it up in the side yard and run it down to the front yard and stick the garden hose on it. We thought it was the coolest thing in the world. But no, and then with his wires, and then another thing we were recently talking about, the extension cords we had when we were building the cabin in the woods, and we were kids. Stephen just told me all the details of the extension cord. I mean, to the little quad box they had, and Steve remembers those things like he saw them yesterday. So definitely into wires and hoses. And then later, ropes and webbing. Of course, those had all colors too. Anything Steve was into, he went all in, as all of you know. And I mean, from recording to rock climbing, guitar, anything Steve did, he put his heart in it. And that was no doubt. And, also, I talked to Steve a lot, actually all the time, and he was very, very proud of Amanda and Andrew, and talked about them often. He'd been planning a trip out here to see his grandson, which I wish, damn it, would have worked. But seeing Maverick today, and in pictures on Facebook, Caitlin, you're gonna have your hands full. Pretty sure. So, and well, I thought Steve had more of his 9 lives left, because I think I was more worried about him 12 years ago after a stroke than I was this time. This one I wasn't even too stressed about. Went south so quick. But yeah, I'm glad at least we have this evening to share stories, and everybody in here, I'm sure, has got a million stories. So I'm glad to see that. And also thanks to Kurt for organizing this thing, for jumping on the ball right out of the gate and making this happen. Somebody had to be quiet. You grabbed the reins right away, so I appreciate that. And then of course Linda, Amanda, and Andrew putting all this together in the slideshow, which I'm very much looking forward to seeing. It's going to be very cool. So, and but Steve was a dear friend, and I miss him a ton already. So that's about all I
I was going to use this for our PA system tonight, but I just thought this is not going to work with Steve. He's just going to have some issues, so I just had to put that behind. But Rick, I mean, thank you so much. Gemco, I mean, I love that comment. I mean, Gemco, 2 guys from Italy, which by the way is closed. Casa de Pizza. I mean, there's so many just staples from. I love it, and I love hearing from people who knew Steve and have these stories, because I forgot about the Fredericks of Hollywood, and also the Werbelows, Werbelow beverage company, which still if you Google it is still out there.
It wasn't actually related. That was just a coincidence in Canada. Werbelow was not that.
So Steve was still. He told me that for he was not. Steve, you got me on that one. Still, I'm gonna have to make a note of that one. But anyways, thanks, Rick. I appreciate it.
His dad made by selling his Corvette, and Steve was.
Ah.
From the Corvette to the Toyota Corolla.
Which is yeah,
That's right.
Thanks again, Rick. I appreciate it. And I also, coming next is going to be a pretty significant video presentation put on by Steve's family. Andrew led the attack on that, which, I never knew it was Andrew. I'm sorry. I only knew it was Drewhead, which I love. I just love that nickname, But I know you're grown up now, and I apologize. I'm not trying to embarrass you. You have a family now and children and a lovely wife, and I
Steve
just
gave everybody nicknames.
I don't want to downplay that, but I just that's one of the nicknames because Steve had a way of giving everybody in the room a nickname. I had many. I mean, it started off. He called me KM for Kurt Menslage. But people didn't know what KM was because he kind of said it fast. So it was Cam.
We thought it was Cam.
Right. So they thought my name was Cameron, which wasn't my name at all. But that's the way it goes. And then Linda knows me as Curtis, which when she and I talked just a few weeks ago, and right out of the gate, she's like, Curtis, it's so good to hear your voice. I'm like, no, it's called me Curtis and Steve. I thought that was so awesome, and it was just like he was a nickname guy. And if you spent any more than 2 or 3 hours with him, you'd have a nickname pretty quick. Go ahead, what? Yeah, can you talk? Yeah, you want to have a... Please, come on, yeah. So again, after Keith has a moment to say what he wants to say, I just wanted to say that Linda's family, Andrew and Linda and Amanda and Caitlin put a great slideshow presentation that we're going to see in a minute, and it took a lot to put this together. It wasn't easy, and thank you for everyone in this room who sent in information and pictures and stories. So, and that it's a group effort, but Andrew led the attack with his family. So, thank you for that. I appreciate that. We're going to show that, and Keith has a few words to say real quick. And again, anybody, please, anytime throughout the evening, have your word.
All right, sorry if I get emotional. Steve was one of those people that you really don't realize how much he shapes everybody's lives around. Anything from, like, I have a nickname, Wedge Cut.
That's right.
Didn't realize it.
Wedge for short.
Everyone called me Wedge. And it really didn't dawn on me until Kurt said that Steve gave me that. It was from a haircut, but it's obviously stuck.
Flock of seagulls.
And, Steve was always the expert. He had to know everything. If he got into something, rock climbing, sound mixing, the Datsun 510. I don't know if everybody remembers the Datsun 510. I still have a love affair with Datsun today. I have a 240Z that my brother Scott had back in '83. And then he gave it to me in '99, and I've since rebuilt it, and I'm on my second rebuild. So invested way too much money. Thank you, honey. If I had to think of one thing that would describe Steve, it was the hair. When we were young, it was all about the hair. I mean, how many people remember Steve flipping the hair?
And chewing on it.
I remember him chewing on his hair.
It's true, and his clothing, his fashion. He was the fashion plate, always wore the coolest jeans, and he probably shaped a lot of who you are. Because Kurt is very much into fashion. I'm not, obviously. But I just remember days when we were young. Steve had the rape van, the black van, and we used to ride in the back of that thing on the way to school because when it rained, we didn't have cars, we didn't have money. So Steve had the van, we'd all hop in the back of the van, and Steve would do about 97 miles an hour down Woodley. And you'd go flying into everything because there was nothing to grab. It was carpet, carpet, and carpet. And so you had
inches of foam on the floor.
and there was no place to grab. You were flying into the walls, doors. I mean, it was flat out dangerous. What I remember about Mrs. Werbelow is just how much disappointment she had in me. I always had that look. Mr. Werbelow, my memories of him were pretty much of him walking the neighborhood. He liked to walk. And just how Steve was an expert in sound mixing, and how he took everything, to the nth degree. Andrew, you probably inherited this. It's hereditary. You're not going to get rid of it. But Steve was a good guy. I mean, he really shaped a lot of people, and I think that we all owe him a debt of gratitude. So, thanks, Steve.
Andrew's going to start the show. This is something he put together with his family, so enjoy.
It's fine.
fucked up music. Oh, woo! What's going on here at the Casa de Steve-O? Oh boy. Saturday night, we're rocking. Oh, good time. Oh, that's the pipes. Woo!
Andrew put this together in the family. And that was.
Hours each night, hours.
And I gotta tell you,
Hours each
it
night.
took a long
A
time.
long time.
And I love the fact that the music was loud. You know, and that clip from Motley Crue. Many people don't know this, but Steve was so proud that he and my brother once set up the microphones at a rock club for Motley Crue one time. That they thought that was like them getting into the music business, which I was very excited. But going back, I gotta tell you that those shots with Steve and you, Andrew, and Amanda, every dad in this room loves those pictures. I picture my son falling asleep within my arms, and your dad loved you when he did that. That means something to every dad in this room. And I gotta say that when Rick was kind enough to mention that the reins pushed a little hard to get this event going, that was the least that I owed to Steve. Because he helped me in so many times. Like I said, I never asked him for help, but he said no. Not once. Sometimes it took a little bit of beer. He would always say yes. And he shaped my life, with so much help. And like I said, my first car was after him. Music was after him. I liked so many of the bands that he liked. Triumph, which I'm a nut, but Record Store release day, this 2 weeks ago, they released Triumph Allied Forces 40th anniversary. There was 1,200 copies released, and I was lucky to get one. And I've been listening to it this whole week, and I'm thinking about Steve, and I'm just like, the fact that you put that in there, that was a very obscure track to put in there. Sorry, I'm crying. But I was all over this when Steve passed, because he helped me in so many ways. Just really quick, Steve shaped where I went in my career as a person. He's like, Kurt, you're always conniving somebody out of something. Why don't you go into sales? And at O'Neill, that's how I got into sales. I was working with Steve in the warehouse and Tom, and I was a packer. I was a puller, then I was a packer, and he's like, dude, why don't you go in there? Scott moved up into sales, why don't you move into sales? You're always weaseling something out of somebody. And I did. And I went into sales, and I became a salesman and a sales manager, and I've been in sales ever since. And I don't know, maybe my life would have been better, maybe my life would have been worse, but Steve pushed me in a direction that put me in a pretty good spot in my life. And I have to him to thank for that. And Steve was the most intelligent person I know who was self-taught. No matter what he talked about, and Rick touched on it, whether it was playing bass, whether it was recording, live sound reinforcement, or recording people in a studio, he didn't sit there and go. Yes, he went to one sound. I think it was Soundmasters for a small portion of music knowledge. But almost everything that he did, especially when it came to music and playing bass or playing guitar, it was himself. He didn't go get a teacher and go, hey, teach me how to play bass, teach me how to play guitar, teach me to do this. He did it himself. And I was so excited to see the pictures that he threw in there of him playing bass later in life. I didn't know he still played bass. I didn't know that. He never really mentioned that to me. He talked about the jobs with the church and jobs with recording and whatever else, but he didn't talk that he was still playing music, and I just love that. But he taught himself, and that's a hard thing to do. I never taught myself anything. I went to school, I learned things, I went through life and learned things from other people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to teach it to yourself is a lot harder, because the minute you don't understand something, you can say, well, who do I talk to? Where do I go? And he still did it. Especially when it came up with Tom to rock climb. Doing bouldering off of Topanga Canyon or Talkeet's Rock or El Cap or Half Moon, whatever you want to talk about. He put his life in the line because he taught himself. That was a pretty impressive thing. So, anyways, I just wanted to mention that. I also wanted to remind us all that it's not about the years of life that we spend on this earth, but what we do in the years that we're on this earth. And he maximized his years, and he maximized a lot of my years as well. And I, again, encourage anybody who wants to say a few words before, you have more video, right?
Yeah, there's a couple more.
Okay, so if anybody here wants to say a few words before we get into the next video, please do. Come on up, that's fine, that's great. We have the microphone, but it might be easier just to yell like I know.
Want me to yell? Oh, okay.
Might be easier. You can come up here if you want.
Is there a microphone over there?
There is a microphone.
It's not acceptable to Steve.
Yeah.
If he would have, he would have set this up really loud.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely not Steve quality. It's kind of rigged.
Oh. I have to let you know that Steve was the one who really showed me about sound recording. And ever since we were in high school, back he would help me out when I was in the beginning rock and roll years for me. But I don't know if you're aware of this, but through the years I've been in some really, really great studios and recording sessions and stuff. But Steve, you may not realize this because he's completely insane, but he's like a Mozart of sound engineering. He's really good. Out of all the people, he was, so that I could, you wanted to hear some stuff about Steve, I'll give you a little how technical he was. He was like, what happened was that he became an expert in drums because what he would do is he would go and research various famous, one time we were at the recording studio and I was at a studio and he goes, Steve, check this out. And he started playing Saturday Night Fever by the Bee Gees. And he goes, listen to this drum beat. And he goes, this is exactly what I want to get. And he said, this right here, Steve, was not done by any drum machine, but a live drummer. And he sat there for 10 minutes explaining exactly how to do the damn equalization on the fucking drums. I had no idea what he was talking about. You go, yeah, man, it's cool. You see, you remember how Steve was talking. What can I say? I mean, he was a Mozart at recording. What the fuck? It's like he was like recording the best musicians. He recorded Stanley Clarke. He recorded Carmen and Pieces band, King Cobra. These guys were monstrous. He was an expert at the drums and the bass. He was as good as anybody any sound engineer you could ever possibly hear in any recording that's ever been done. He was at that level. He was a Mozart level. He taught me a few things. I make all right recordings, not like him. I can get by with MIDI now and all the cool back stuff. But anyway, he taught me how to use that too, by the way. He would help me out. Back in '94 after the earthquake, he called me. I didn't. What happened was, I hadn't seen him for 10 years. I saw him in '84, and then I didn't see him again until '94. I was at the Alpha Beta up there by Rinaldi and Balboa, right? Okay. Some guy walks by and he goes, "Hey, Steve," and I go, "Dude, you grew like 2 feet, and what is with the tattoos?" He was covered with tattoos. Apparently he had been in a band called Tattoo Mood. And then right after that we started getting recording, and that's when he started excelling. He started, he would, like I say, he would read like the recording we did in Nashville. He went to Nashville. And we were in a situation where he was a world-class studio, and it was like he was like Mozart directing and he had interns there. He had all this shit going on. I had no idea what he was doing, but man, that drum kit, he had $50,000 in microphones on 30 tracks, and it was the really rad DW kit. Different the sizes than your Gretsch. It was a DW, and 30 microphones, and he also hired a second sound engineer to tweak the recording of the 30 tracks to bring it down. Some guy that we had worked with before. He was really good. And then I go to him and go, and this is a good intense. I go, dude, he was going to record piano for me. It was a really, really nice 7-foot Kawhi grand piano. And I go, Steve, so how are you going to do this, dude? What are you going to do? And he goes, come over here, Steve. And he goes, here. And he goes, put your hand. I put up my hand. And he drops this microphone into it. And he goes, don't drop that. That microphone is 50 years old. It's tube and it's $10,000. And I'm going, he drops it like this. I go, dude! And and I have to admit to you, he made that piano sound great. Okay, I'm sorry, he was a Mozart of S. Einstein.
No,
You know.
thank you.
Oh my God, I almost killed this thing.
Hey, great job, Andrew, putting that together, by the way, and thank you for everybody putting this together. My name is Pappy, Patrick Marty, Pappy. My first experience, by the way, I was in the Purple Sweats in one of the earlier bands. Valley Brats.
He'll be signing autographs after.
Sorry. My first experience with Steve, I call him Werb, by the way. Werb.
Good
Always
nickname.
have.
Because he nicknamed him Beanpole.
Yes, he named me Beanpole, which he turned around to Pole Bean, to just PB or Pole. So, yes, yep, official. And my first experience was I was like 14 years old. We lived about Westbury and Gillette, actually a block south of Westbury on Paulette. During the summer, all of a sudden I hear this very loud music. That's pretty far from the set. It's Steve's big old speakers in the garage. I ride my bike up there. Well, Steve with his garage open, those huge speakers he used to do all, the outdoor concerts for the bands back in the day. Then 40 years later, I was 15, took me to my first concert. Forum was the Rush concert. Thought I was gonna die on the way down there in the Celica, his mom's Celica. Drove at least 90 miles an hour. Down Gillette. Supra, yes. Celica Supra, excuse me. The fancier one. That was amazing, unbelievable.
With an automatic that he shifted every single gear. First, second, third, fourth. He never let the car shift.
We got there about 20 minutes before him in Inglewood. From Granada Hills, about 20 minutes. And
she wanted a 4-cylinder. He insisted on getting the Mom, you need the 6-cylinder. Just so he could drive.
she should have got the
She never drove the
4-cylinder.
car. He drove it all the time.
Should have got the 4-cylinder for all of us. And I'll be quick. Anywho, later on we had Valley Brats band. He called me up out of the blue. Knew I played the drums a couple years later. Had a cool band. Had some fun stuff, fun times. Lived together in Reseda. Everybody lives in Reseda once. I lived in there twice. We lived in a house. Had some great parties. Great fun times. But I talk to Werb every week still. So, yeah. Anyhow, just he does shape your life in certain ways, and he definitely super smart. Anyhow, that's all I got to say, and thank you so much for listening. I'll leave you this to.
It's just,
Don't worry about it.
Where's Steve when you need him?
That's
Hey everybody, I'm Robert Tishman. I don't know if y'all know me. I grew up in a neighborhood, and Pappy, all them guys, we all grew up together. But I made a few notes, so let me just pull them up. And as I'm sitting here, it didn't really hit me really until you guys started talking about it. It kind of brought all the memories back. I mean, Howie, Steve was like our buddy. But,
What was your nickname?
I can't remember.
But I'm sure somebody can.
I remember it's very
No. Here's the pop quiz. Who gave you my nickname?
Steve. And his nickname was Lip. Because he never shut up.
I still remember he had a girlfriend, her name was Sherry, and she says, "Why do they call you Lip?" Remember her? And I said, "Well, I'll take off and I'll show you."
So an hour later?
I had about 18 cars in my childhood. Seriously, I went through like 3-4 cars pretty quick. And I remember I had a Volkswagen Rabbit, and I wanted to make that thing cool. Well, how do you make a Volkswagen cool? You just can't.
Oh.
But Steve was really cool at putting in stereo systems. So we managed to get a stereo. Don't tell me how we got him. And then and I didn't realize this until later, but he was so good with wood at cutting. So the wheel well came around, and he was able to cut this wood and make the speaker boxes custom for my speakers in the back of my Volkswagen Rabbit. I opened up that thing, and it just wailed. And I was thinking and it wasn't until he started building his studios that I realized that was like the beginning of it. you know, he was able to custom build everything in his garage at the time. He'll build his speakers. I don't know if you know, when we went rock climbing, in his roof, he had beams in his garage, E.T.'s house, Eva Teresa, and he put pieces of wood up there. And he nailed them meticulously for rock climbing. And you had to go, remember that, Tommy? And you had to go across, and he'd make me do pull-ups and try to climb. I wasn't as good as him, but it was all about the wood, and there was more wood. There was a lot of projects he built, but that was pretty good memories. When I was in college, well, I dropped out. What am I going to do? I went to work. I'll go to junior college. Went back to junior college. Well, then I went back to college. Well, in all this time, I had some downtime, so I was able to spend a lot of time with Steve because I guess he wasn't working. I'm not really sure, but so we used to hang out at his house all the time, and I'll never forget it. We'd go over, and he was playing this music, and it was like when I first got to know him, it was MTV. What the hell is this shit? MTV, and we were watching MTV, and I'll never forget it. It was just the beginning of this stage. You remember that? Yeah. And it was crazy. And then, but that was the time I knew Steve. And then here's another thing about Steve, and I didn't learn this till later. He had me come over, and he loved food. And so I used to cook, and I don't know if it's because he smoked pot and he liked to eat, but so I used to cook on his, and he had pretty good utensils and a lot of food. So I said, sure. So I used to make eggs and with onions, but I sauteed the onions real quick, really low heat, so they sweated. And I don't want to bore you, but he loved cooking, and he was watching the technique. No, I'm telling you, and he watched this, and then okay, whatever. So he ended up getting Calphalons after, and he was a big cook. I don't know if you know this. I mean, he loved to cook, and it was. I think that was the beginning of the stages. I'm not kidding you. I thought about that. It was kind of cool. And then, here's a good story. So we love, he taught me to climb, okay? There's a lot of good climbers here. Tom is a real good climber. We did a lot of climbing. So one day he gets this bright idea. He says, hey, let's go up to Yosemite and we'll do some climbing, right? Okay, let's go. So I took off for like a week. I had an old Camaro at the time with a 6-cylinder. And we got in that thing, we drove all the way up to Yosemite.
That was awesome.
Yeah, whatever. So we get up there, and then we camp. And what's that camp where all the climbers? Camp 7 or?
Camp 4.
Camp 4. And so we stayed there, and there were people from Germany and this and that. And so we were climbing, and he took me up some really good stuff. I didn't deserve to be climbing on some of the rocks that I was on because of him, because he led so well that it was easy for me to come behind and just follow him. But there was one climb that was called, I'll never forget, the Central Pillar of Frenzy. First time I've ever seen him back off a climb. And there was this pitch that we did, and it had a big chimney, and he was a smaller guy, and you had to wedge yourself in there. So I was able to wedge myself in there and get him up this pitch, and we made the whole climb, and he was really ecstatic that day. Only time ever I've ever led Steve on anything. It was like one of the proudest moments of my life. I am not kidding you. I am not kidding you.
We need more of the story. What happened that day?
Oh, well, there is a little more of the story. Hold on.
Steve
So,
is very fast.
Shut up. Hey, you want to get up here and talk? All right. So at the end of the day, you find a boulder in Yosemite. At Camp 4 was it? And people smoke pot. Okay. So we were up there, not on federal land, it isn't, by the way. I found out later, by the way. So we were smoking, and it, it's turning dusk, it's getting dark, and all of a sudden I hear this, halt, park rangers. I said, crap, and I'm holding this stuff. Steve is like this, he hands it to me, and I took off running. So I'm running, and I don't know what happened to Steve, of course. He drove in the bushes. And so, bottom line is, I got arrested. So I said, don't worry, Steve's going to save me. So I go to jail. I'm in an orange jumpsuit. And at the time, it was the Wani Hotel. It was an orange jumpsuit. It was like an 1800 jail. I'm not kidding you, okay? I mean, they don't have it anymore. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited. You're not going to believe it. You're not going to believe it. Steve never showed. So I'm pissed. So I get my one phone call. I call my mom. Who else could I call, right?
He was in a tent across with you guys, by the way, in a random tent.
watching you get arrested, by the way. He did tell me that, by the way.
So I had to live with the indignity of my mom driving up in the middle of the night to Yosemite, pick me up, and I was so tired because I was in jail with these grungy, nasty. I was grungy and nasty, by the way, but they were grungier and nastier. And I had to sleep all the way back in the back of an old Camaro, just laying down the whole way back. So I get back. I have to go all the way back up there with my car, go to jail. I mean, go to. They had a courthouse, a federal courthouse. And it got exonerated, but I was exonerated. So I go back to Steve. What happened? E.T. phone home. He called his mother, and she wired him some money, and he just went home. That was.
He didn't have to take a bus.
So no, that was actually a good lesson for me, by the way. But one thing about climbing though is he taught me how to face death. I never realized the kind of lessons that he taught me rock climbing. Rock climbing, you're relying on the folks you're climbing with, and unless you really rock climb, you just don't realize, that you rely on everybody in your team. And he taught me the most about teamwork of anybody I know in my life. I'm not kidding you, because I felt like he had my life in his hands. It was really a huge lesson. And I don't know if you know this about rock climbing, but I don't know if anyone knows this. The reason why he rock climbs is because he told me, I was watching A-Team. I was watching A-Team and they were repelling. A-Team. That's how he started. A-Team, the A-Team, Mr. T, no, Mr. T. Mr. T. And it was because they were repelling. He goes, I'm going to go repel. He thought, so him and Scott, they went out and repelling. That's how it started.
It all started with repelling.
It all started repelling.
It transitioned.
Yeah, then it went to rock climbing. Yeah. I'm just going to tell you right now, Steve, we were like different worlds. We came together, and he treated me as good of a friend as Pappy, Sean. I mean, you name Tom, everybody was equal with Steve. And he made everybody feel special. I'm not kidding you. He's a good guy.
I have to say, I second that motion. I mean, he's got so many worlds just in this room, but also worlds within, the world that he grew up in. Okay? And Steve, I mean, he just, he loved everybody. I mean, he was a guy who there weren't barriers. There weren't like lines. There weren't like, I can't do this with this guy. I mean, I was the punk kid who charged 25 cents to take a message. I mean, he hated me. I used to charge him 25 cents when he called my brother. So I would tell him, yeah, Scott, Steve called. Give me a quarter. I mean, he used to talk shit to me all day long. And he still put me on the same level as you or as anybody else in this room. And he really, there was no lines. And that was a huge thing. And by the way, jail, I mean, how many people have a friend here who got you into jail? I mean, that's a big deal. Well, I'm sorry, Linda. Sorry. I wasn't, that's, but that's true. But I mean, seriously, I mean, it's like every story that you probably think about with Steve, it's just a bizarre situation. And, I look at the pictures that Andrew put together with a great montage on that video, and I say to myself, today, with the video phones no problem. I've got great pictures of my son and I, no problem. But in the 80s and 90s, who has a video film people following him? Did you see how many pictures he had?
That was amazing.
I didn't have any of those pictures myself. I mean, that was insane. Which means he just had a mindset of just like, you know what? This is where I am, this is what I want to do, and he was able to share it with us years later, and that was a big thing because I don't think at least I don't have any of those film pictures from the 80s and 90s, and I'm actually thankful for that, but that's just, that was huge, and again, great job, Andrew, on that, great job. And he's got another video for us, so we're going to let him start that really quick, and we're going to do some more stories after that.
I don't know if it's going to be loud.
Who's this?
I think so.
These are some people who couldn't make it here.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're not too bummed out. My name is Daryl. I'm here in Grand Junction, Colorado. I've been a friend of Steve's from the get-go, since the early 80s. We kind of hit it off, but we were also the type that, man, we spent too much time together. We'd be beating heads. But Steve was one of those friends that no matter how long the time we spent apart, every conversation was just like yesterday. And in the last few years, we've actually, we're on the phone with each other every other day or every day, checking up on each other, being a rock, being a guide for each other, and keeping each other grounded during the last 4 years. I'm really gonna miss him. I'm gonna miss those phone calls every morning. It's a silence that is hard to get over. But yeah, he was a great friend, and I loved him as a brother, and I'm gonna miss him. And I know you will too. Sorry to see you go, Steve. I just scored me a big fat green ball somewhere here. It's a Colorado Kush right here for you. This one's for you. I know you wanted this in your last week of life, and you didn't get it, but I'm going to smoke it for you right now, brother. So you have a good rest, and I'll see you when I hit the cosmos. Take care, everybody, and you have a great day. Bye.
What do you want next one?
Do Amos.
I haven't seen this.
Huh?
I haven't seen this one.
This is a friend from Nashville.
He lived out here too.
He lived out here too.
I probably know half of you. Not sure. Everybody that does know me, I guess you know me. Anyway, I was Steve's longtime friend. We have known each other about 30 years, maybe more. Steve has always been there for me. Hell, he's always been there for everybody, you know. But the biggest thing about Steve was that he was honest, he was loyal, he was a strong man. He loved me, I loved him. Of course, you probably wouldn't know that at the time, but we did a lot of music together. We started, everything we did was together back in the 80s, and that's when I used to live in California. Steve, all I can tell you, man, is I'm gonna miss you really bad. He left behind a wonderful son and a wonderful daughter, and a wonderful mom. And you know, this shouldn't have really happened. This is hard. I don't really know how to do this. I'm being honest. I thought that I could do this, but I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Linda asked me to say a little something about him. Well, he was one of the most talented men I've ever met in my life. Okay? There was nobody that could outrun sound that I've ever worked with. There was no funner band that I've ever been in that was not with him. He believed in me. He believed in all of us. We had a great team. You know, it's just something that I really can't explain. You know, I'm rambling here because I don't know what I'm saying and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just being honest. This is his backyard where I'm at. He built this deck. He was so proud of it. I'm sitting on it. He was a little always trying to get me to gig again. You know, and I didn't want to play music no more, but he wouldn't leave me alone. He just believed in my songs, and that's, you know, I don't know. He pushed me all the time. Amos, you got to get out. I followed you to Nashville, and you're out chasing cows. I don't understand that. That's what he used to say to me. I used to tell him, Pete, I'm done with the music. But he wouldn't. He was relentless. He wouldn't leave me alone, you know. But that's a good friend. That's just the way it was. He believed in me when I did, you know. Anyway, I don't really know how to say a lot. I'm gonna play a song that he loved. It's called Anyway. He said this is the song I should be playing out, and I never did. I wish I would have. So if I screw this up, everybody, Howie, Strider, David, Fish, are you out there? Hey, I'm right here. I'm nervous as hell. I love all of you. Maybe one day we can get back together and do something for old Pete. You know, I don't know. The song he liked that I wrote was a song called Anyway. And Amos, that's your song, he'd say. You know, that's the one we got to do. That's it. I said, I don't think so. But that's him. We always argued over music, and Howie will tell you that, and Fish, you know, we've been at it for 30 years. Steve, I'm gonna miss you. I love you, and I know you're listening right now, and I'm not doing a very good job at this. Linda, Andrew, Amanda, I love you guys with all my heart. And this is called Anyway.
Baby
so far away, but I still love you anyway. I still love you anyway.
So, okay, I just want to say so we have a couple other videos when we went to go, when we went up there, or wherever it is, down
Tennessee.
south. When we went to Tennessee, we got to see a lot of what Steve has been doing for the last 20 years. And can you hear me? I don't want that in my face.
You good? As long as you can hear, I just want to make sure everyone's getting it.
And so, I mean, I would talk to him, you know, and he would tell me, but you know, I imagined different stuff, you know, it wasn't what was really happening. And so we have a couple things from Tennessee that I just felt like you guys should know, you know, because he worked his ass off. You know, when we got there, he had instructions, thank you, Laura, you know, in his suitcase, where all his stuff was. And so we had to collect it. His friends out there were so nice and kind-hearted and gracious. And, you know, they came and brought his gear that was spread all over Tennessee. Microphones that were, you know, thousands of dollars, if not more. And tools. He had so much tools. Different jobs he was doing all over. And so, this is Expression City. This is a, are you playing it right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So the person who owned this, if you guys, I know you all have talked to him in the last 10 years, or 20 years, that's how he was. I can't believe he did that. And I also want to say to like all the Granada Hills kids, you guys are so blessed to have remained in contact.
Yeah.
You know, that's just something that doesn't really happen. And the outpouring of love, you know, Curtis, thank you so much. And Howie, you know, the music, you know, Triumph, what's it called? And then Rick, you know, Richie. But, so this is everything he's built. And his employer, like, put this together. So, he had kids that he mentored and, you know, Steve taught them how to do construction. And, you know, he built a performing arts place, basically. And there was a dance studio, a stage, a recording studio. There was a lobby. The lighting on the stage was just, it's like you would see at a rock concert, you know. He did all of it. It was his design. And this is after he had a stroke, you know, and he was amazing. I was kind of blown away, you know. So he talked to all of you guys about him. I'm doing sound at the church, so I'm thinking church is separate, but it was all one place. The performing arts studio, the church, the recording studio, the lobby was all one place, and he built it. And his friends were just awesome. We were lucky to meet someone he was the best man at Fritz's wedding. His name is actually Ryan, but he nicknamed him or whatever. His name is Fritz. So he flew to Florida after Andrew's wedding when he came out, and he was his best man. Fritz drove from Florida as soon as he heard with his family and came down and helped us take over his recording studio because I don't know anything. I know what outboard gear is and microphones and that's it. But he knew the value and he helped Andrew take that apart and we collected all this stuff and I just want you guys to know how freaking hard he worked, and he was amazing and he was loved in Tennessee and yeah, so here's the video.
That's like after he.
And that's it. I talked through the whole thing. But we have we have Fritz and Scotty left, right?
Did you want?
Yeah, whatever you
want to do. I feel
Well,
like we
definitely Scotty.
do Scotty's.
And then whoever else wants to share.
Let's do both those and then we'll make it open.
Yeah.
Let's make sure they get their video, okay.
All right, so story one. When I first moved in with Steve, I found him via a Craigslist ad. After responding to the ad, which had a Coke machine in it, did not have a picture of his studio. Sadly, we cannot resolve this argument because I couldn't find the ad in the Wayback Machine, but I told everybody about this cool Dime Air Coke machine. And anyway, responded to his Craigslist ad. We met, we talked for music for like 4 hours, or talked about music for like 4 hours. I told him I was interested in music and immediately brought me upstairs to his studio. I say upstairs because like his Grandview house, he had this really cool room where you walked up like a half flight of stairs and then there was this like essentially what he made into a control room. So we just sat there and hung out and talked and I was so excited. I go back and have dinner with my ex and her friends, and I didn't read the room very well because I told them how excited I was, and of course, we had just broken up 3 months earlier, and we're kind of trying to figure out what we were going to be, and that may have not been the right crowd to express my excitement to. So one of them says, well, what if he turns out to be a serial killer? Why would this great guy need a roommate? I'm like, whoa. So that kind of freaks me out. So I tell my parents about it in this email where I'm like panicked but excited. And I decided to go ahead and move in with them. I move in, things seem like they're going great, except that the other roommate, Joey, he only lives in his bathrobe, only comes out at night, and looks to only consume Mountain Dew. So I thought that was interesting. They called him Hef. I think they had, or the Count, I think maybe. I don't know if I'm making that one up. He kind of reminded me of a vampire at times. Love you though, Joey. Anyway, there's that. And so then when I came home, I started to notice that he always had murder TV on. Like Steve would wake up every morning and like mop his floor and like do the dishes and put on murder TV. I mean, sometimes it was CNN, or actually sometimes it would like start out with like the news, but then it would quickly go to murder TV. And I'd be like, Steve, what the hell, man? And so then he just goes into his fascination about serial killers, and he's always like, no, Fritz, I would never hurt anybody. But he was just insanely fascinated with it. So then I learned all these facts that I did not need to know. Their obsession with socks, having clean socks and folding them, and their underwear, clean underwear, just like a lot about cleanliness. And I'm like watching this man clean his house every day and do his laundry every day. And he had his own particular thing about socks. And if you know Steve, he had a weird thing about underwear too. And so I'm like, Steven, this is you. And then he's like, yeah. And then when they're young, the first thing they'll do is they'll like murder a dog. And I'm just like, fucking hey, Steve, you got like 2 or 3 dogs. Like, this is nuts. Like, you're freaking me out, man. So yeah, Steven, I love you, man. Clearly I do, because I bought it, and yeah. So, all right, there's that story. All right, so now let's go into story 2. And I guess it's not really a story, it's just kind of observation I had. I guess I always found him to be like a young soul that found itself trapped in an old man's body. I never got to know Steve when he was fully healthy. I only knew him after his stroke. And, as his friend, it was both like tough and, I guess I admired him for like fighting through it and dealing with it. And many people have told me I have like an old person's soul. And so I guess I found like something really interesting about our relationship where, he was older, but clearly thought like he was still like 25. And I was younger, but I often probably was thinking like I was 50. And there's just something beautiful about the wisdom that he found in having tried all of this stuff. And it just feels like, in his time here, he didn't waste his time. He made as many moments count as he could, and if he wanted to do it, he went out and did it. He climbed mountains. He recorded some of the best musicians in the world. He started a beautiful family. Left on a whim when he wanted to do music in Nashville. And, he just put his all into everything. And I don't know, like I know some people believe in reincarnation, some don't. But whatever's next, I don't feel like his soul has lingered. I think he's on to the next thing. I feel him pop in sometimes to just, give me some feedback if we're looking at it spiritually. But I don't feel like he's lingering or sad for what he did here on earth. There's something beautiful to that. So many of us leave with, regrets, and he left it all on the table. And, sometimes it kind of looked like madness, but it was always beautiful. And he always had a way of making things beautiful and making the people that he came across feel special and important and accepted. And, I sometimes felt like if that was a reflection of him, trying to feel that, but, we love you, man. You are special, and, you are important, and we accept you, and, we know you're here. We also know you're on to the next thing, man. I don't know, like, this is such a sad circumstance. I keep looking at my phone, like so many people probably are right now, being like, I saw this thing Steve totally would want to know. One of my friends keeps texting me, he's like, yeah, I just totally want to message Steve this. And I'm like, yeah, but to be honest, like whenever I have those thoughts, I also have this, I can also just hear his voice in the back of my head. I don't know if it's his likely response, like I just have like that pattern in my head, or if it's his spirit reaching out to just be like, not that that's something he did, but it's kind of like the vibe he gave. His things were more like, chin scratches, and he'd be like, that's totally rad. Or like my favorite is whenever he'd make fun of me doing techno music, he'd go, woo, woo, woo. It kind of reminded me of oh man, there's a comic who makes fun of his dad in this dance that he did, but yeah. So young soul, old man's body, now young soul, moving on to the next thing. I'm really excited for however he reincarnates, or if he's just up there in the pearly gates hanging out, having some cocktails. Now that none of that shit matters. So love you, man.
Okay, so this last video is my brother. Steve's best friends. This took him probably a dozen takes to put it together. He's really sorry he couldn't be here. Again, like I mentioned before, his son is going to Afghanistan next week. Scott and Steve, two of the hardest working guys I've ever known. My brother, I look at myself and I said, dude, you're such a wimp. You don't do anything he does. He's out there working so hard, just like Steve. You were like peas in a pod. They talked every day. He's gonna miss him, as we all are. But he's gonna miss him every day. Every day he talked to him.
Hey, what's up, guys? Scotty here. Yeah, this really blows. So, Linda called me. She knew I wasn't going to be able to make it this trip for the celebration of life, and asked me if I would do a video. And I'm like, oh yeah, no problem, sure. Anything, sure, no problem. Oh, this fucking sucks. I've been out here pacing around, not knowing what to say exactly. I so miss that dude. We've been like best friends for so long. And it just sucks. All the memories, all the days playing baseball together and boogie boarding, surfing up and down the coast, rock climbing, hanging out in the garage building the 510, rock climbing in his garage, and doing pull-ups all night, partying out with all the guys. Those were the days. Driving around in that black van, stereo blasting, Kiss just blasting. Those were the days. That was awesome. Those are the days we gotta think about and just remember all the good times and the parties, the rock climbing, all the awesome days in Hollywood, nights in Hollywood, all the crazy shit we did back then and somehow lived through it. Those were awesome days, and I cherish all the time with my buddy Steve and with the rest of you that were parts of that. I know we're all different lives now, different coasts, whatever, but I still remember all those times. They mean a lot to me. And I really wish I could have been there with y'all. And I thank Kurt and Linda for putting this all together. It's a celebration of life, and he wouldn't want us doing any bullshit. And he was not an emotional dude, really. He didn't ever been crying like this, being all lame. But he'd be happy that we're all together here. And I know I'm not there, but I'm with you guys anyway. I don't know, Linda. It was awesome how you two stayed together, and even though it did your own things, and you guys still were better friends in the end than you were back in the day. And you got the two awesome youths. I remember dancing with Amanda on my feet at your wedding. That was awesome. Then along came Drew Head. Head? What up, Head? I tell you guys, Steve was so proud of you guys.
I talked to the dude probably 5 days a week, 6 days a week, every night. On the way home from work, I just get on the phone, and I'd have to hear his lectures about Trump and whatnot. But oh guys, I mean, he was so proud of you kids, constantly bragging about all the cool things you guys had going on, and it was just amazing. You know, he was just so. And then Andrew, you had that little dude there. Oh man, he became grandpa. He was freaking stoked. I tell you what, he was stoked. But anyway, this is like the fifth or sixth version of this that I've attempted tonight. I don't know if this one's gonna stick yet either, but I had to delete the other ones. I don't know what all to say, but I just totally cherish my friendship with him. And with all of you guys, but he and I just really hit it off, and even though we're in different states, I mean, we freaking talk like 5 to, I don't know, sometimes 7 days a week, half hour at a time, and we never had enough shit to say. Well, anyway, he knows we all miss him, and I miss all you too, and I thank you all for coming together for this celebration. You know, I really wish I could have been there too, but I couldn't make it. So here I am virtually, virtually sobbing here like an idiot. Anyway, hey, I love you guys, and take care. God bless.
I'm going to say a few words at the end, but is there anybody else who'd like to say a few words? Please come up, please.
Hi, I'm Zane, or AKA Reed's kid. I just got like a short little story that I remember from Steve, and it's not that crazy of a story or anything like that, but it's very indicative of his personality. I remember probably maybe when I was like 5 or 6, he was babysitting me and Andrew here, and I don't know if you remember this, tell me if you do. He was like, one day he was like, man, you know what'd be really cool? And he got this big giant jug, probably like a gallon jug of gel, hair gel. And he wanted to spike our hair. And he sat there for probably like 20 minutes a kid, just meticulously spiking our hair up. And when it was all done, he like dried it all off and made it so it was just, you know, very rigid, hard, spiky, 90s ass hair. And when it was all done, me and Andrew, we looked at each other and we just started cracking up at each other because our hair was just sticking up on end like cartoon characters. And I remember he was like, "What? No, it's cool. Come on." And that's what he was. If that was one word I can use to describe Steve, was that he was enthusiastic. And not that long, not that crazy of a story, but the thesis here is that you shouldn't be sad about his death. You should be happy for his life. You should be happy for life in general.
Is there anybody else who'd like to say a few words? Come on, please. Tom.
Hey everyone.
Tiny buddy. Lifelong buddy, actually. Lifelong buddy.
So Steve and I met probably when we're about a week apart in age, and so started hanging out maybe 14 years old, 15 years old. And the thing that I owe to Steve is rock climbing and a love of music. And also just, you know, when you want to do your own thing and you're worried about what people are going to say, he would do it, and he would say, "Fuck them." That was Steve, you know? And I really learned, that was one of the things I learned from him. The other thing is, he got into rappelling, and he invited me up once, and I was scared. And they put me in a rock climbing harness, and they had this rope going over an edge at Stony Point. And it was just a little bit over an edge, and then it was just a free fall. It was totally overhanging, and I back over the edge, and I look down and I go, no, pull me back up. And he just smiles and goes, nope. And so I get down and get over the edge, and then I'm hanging on the rope, and it was like this magic. He had pushed me to do it, and I'm hanging on the rope, and all of a sudden, it's just joy. And it was an incredible feeling of mastering the fear and being able to do something so scary. And then I slid down and I was hooked. And so then we would rappel and we'd see people climbing. And go, how do you do that? That looks cool. So I owe Steve that. And then, so going to climbing places, it's maybe an hour, 5-hour drive, a lot of time in the car listening to music. And he, his ear is so good. And so I just cherished time being in the car with him, and he'd stop and like, hear that. It doesn't matter what it was, right? It was just something, some sound, the way something was recorded, the way somebody sang something. And it really opened my ears, and that has lasted my life. And so those are just some of the things that I love about Steve, and I'll really miss him. Oh, and I wanted to say it was really fun.
Definitely. I'm Scott, and I'm Merton. So
Can you just recap the Tisherman, nicknames real quick?
I think I figured out.
Wedgecott, Lip, and Merton.
There we go.
I think I figured out the whole nickname thing. I think that was Steve's way of disarming people that maybe didn't know each other well or were getting to know each other well, and it just made you feel like you belonged. I think that when you got the nickname Steve, it was like I dubbed you, right? And it's welcome to the clan, to the group, to the friendship. So
he likes you.
Yeah, it was, but it gave you a little bit of boost. You felt like you were good. I'm good here, Dave Kleinfeld, great man, introduced me to Steve the first time I ever met Steve. We were, 14? About that. So Dave had played bass in a band with Steve. And at the time it was Kevin, sorry Howard, you took over the reins, but it was Kevin Polito. And I go over there and I think we were in school one day and David mentioned, look, we're in a band and we're looking for another guitarist. Why don't you come over and try out? So I go over there. It was an audition. I had a freaking audition at 14. I did not have an electric guitar. I was not a rocker. I'm still not really a rocker. But Dave encouraged me, so I go over there and he introduced me to Steve. Steve was this tall. And the guitar, the electric guitar, you know how big they are, big solid wood things, covered this much of him. That's how big he was, but he was the lead guitarist. So he was definitely the head of the group because when I showed up, he kind of took over, says, so you play? It was that kind of attitude, you play? And so play something. So I didn't know what I did. I have no idea. He got me to play. I was completely insecure and shy. And he encouraged me. He didn't know me from Adam. He just encouraged me to play. Try. Go ahead, do it. You're fine. Go ahead and do it. So that little bit, that little push is what he does. And I figured out later on in the years as I got to know him better, hanging out with him in the downtime, after the band, I'd be over there hanging out with him. We'd be in his garage, just him and I. And he'd be sharing with me everything about the things that he was learning about, because everything for Steve was about conquering knowledge. He always had to grow and learn and do more things. So I'd be over there and he's learning how to build cables, connectivity, junction boards, boxes, he'd be buying rack type items for sound recording or for PA systems, and he'd be talking about what this does. Oh, this is a gate, this does this and this, and limits the sound to this, and I adjust this knob here and do that. He's describing it's right over my head. But he did that. He took everything, rock climbing, everything, I think everything everybody sees. I think what I figured out was that he was so gifted with learning and acquiring things. Screw college. One of the most brilliant men I've ever met. So he got people to get out of that uneasiness and try and learn and to grow. So he pursued, he led, and then people would follow. And so nicknames, welcome, you're one of us, believe in yourself, I believe in you. That's kind of what he, at the end of this, and there's a lot of really fun stories that I will not tell today, but there were a lot of great times. I mean, we had so many great times, but I think you've all heard kind of a smattering, but we all lived through that childhood together, and it was a great time with Steve, and I think he's kind of connected with everybody here. We kind of I see him everybody, so I'm glad that we came together. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to say a few words? Tom? How are you next? No problem. You're next, right? No, come on, Tom. Tom was one of the people Steve worked with at O'Neill, which brought a lot of people in this room together. I worked at O'Neill, and it affected my career with Steve pushing me at O'Neill, and Tom's got some words.
Kind of nervous to be up here, but this is for Steve, so I got.
Let's give you a nickname, you'll feel better.
The nicknames. Well, you guys all call him Steve. I call him Works or Peanut, one or the other.
Peanut. Well, that's right. He slipped on a peanut because he was drunk.
Yeah, in a Dodger game. Yeah, he slipped on. The only guy I ever knew that slipped on a peanut, right? After that, he was always known as Peanut. To me, anyways. You know what Curtis said is so true, that everybody that knew Steve was touched by him. I mean, I spent probably 35 years in warehousing and had maybe 100 different people working for me at different times. Steve is the only one out of all those people that I still kept in touch with afterwards. I mean, you know, we met back in maybe 87 or something like that. It was a long time ago. I've never kept up with all the other people I've worked with, but Steve was always great. I was a workaholic, and Steve would always volunteer to stay with me after the place closed down and work with me, and do the things we had to do. And I really appreciated that. And what Curtis was saying is also true, is that he's one of the smartest guys I ever knew. He was really proud of his kids. I feel so blessed to meet you guys. He talked about you guys all the time, and I'm happy to finally meet you. But I had a lot of things I wanted to say, and I can't say them. I can't think of them right now. I'm just happy that everybody showed up for this, and I'm happy that you guys put this thing on, because Steve, he's a memorable person. He's one of the he's definitely the coolest person I ever worked with, and I feel fortunate to have not just worked with him, but I went and saw him at the Whiskey, his band. He's playing my bass over there in that big picture right there. I've been to your house. You were at my wedding. So it's really I'm gonna miss the guy, and thanks all you people.
Howard, come on up. Thank you, Tom. That was very kind. Very nice. Howard Roth. Long time around. How many of those go up?
I'm trying not to be nervous here. I don't talk well in front of crowds, even though I know most of you. But okay, my nickname was Ed, and I hate that name. My middle name's Edwin. I hate that name, and I told Steve that I hate that name, and I bet in the last year and a half, he started calling me Squire. So he actually respected my request to not be called Ed, and he started calling me Squire, so I appreciate that. After many years. So Steve and I had a relationship. We argued a lot. You know, he's one of those guys, one of the very few guys in my life that I love him to death, but he's also a motherfucker. I mean, that's the only way I can put it, and he knows what I mean. But I was thinking, I sit back there and I'm thinking, think of some stories. What's a good story I can tell about Steve? Steve and I met, basically like Rick, probably with kindergarten, first grade. We played at our 6th grade dance together. We played in bands, we rock climbing, camping, all that stuff. But when Linda and he moved into the Woodland Hills house, we built a studio in the garage. And we had, trips back and forth to Home Depot, getting everything. We did everything ourselves, and we had ordered a roll of carpet that was going to cover the entire studio. A roll of carpet that's about this big in diameter, and probably from the wall to here, one huge piece of carpet. We ordered it, we're waiting, couple weeks, finally we get a call, your carpet came in. Now we had the pink order slip from Home Depot. So we go to Home Depot to pick up this roll of carpet, we go back to the guy, he asked to see our slip, we're holding the slip, he asked to see it. He goes, all right, I'll be right back. The guy disappears, we're sitting there 5, 10, 15 minutes, where'd the guy go? I don't know, so I'm thinking, wait a minute, let's go back to the carpet section. So we go back to the carpet section, we look, they got these rolls, and back there's our roll of carpet. You can tell it's the color carpet we ordered, had the same vacuum. And Steve goes, grab it, let's just get the fuck out of here, grab the thing, where's the ticket? It's not like we were thieving, we were frustrated with the guy. So I grabbed one end, I put it over my shoulder, I got the pink slip in my hand, he's got the other end over his shoulder. The Home Depot guy is saying, look out, they're coming through, clear path. We walk right out the front door with this roll of carpet. Yeah. So to this day, we owe Home Depot a few $100 for a roll of carpet. Like 25 years ago, so I think the statute's probably ran out. But I talked to Steve a lot. Unfortunately, we had recently had one of our regular arguments, so I didn't get to talk to him the last month. The last time I spoke to him was April 28th. And that
you're
kind
pro
of.
Trump?
What? I'm sorry?
You're a pro Trump?
Oh, no. Okay, you want to go there? I'm anti-Trump, but I got sick of it. I got sick of the Trump again. Stop already. I hate Trump as much as he does, but you can only say the same thing over and over again so many times. We're like, come on.
Move on. I got you.
The same thing. So, but I didn't get to talk to him the first month, and it kind of hurts a little bit. But that was part of our normal relationship. We'd go through times where we didn't talk, and then, I was going to call him back when we got to the hospital and say, hey, how'd everything go? And it never came to be that way. So it's kind of a bummer I didn't get to talk to him that last month. But sometimes I think to myself, would I really feel that much better had I been able to talk to him the last month? It would have just been normal and the same thing anyway. And this whole death thing, it's we go through life, and as we get older, you have more and more friends that die, and I start to wonder, who's next? Every few months it's somebody else, and as we get older, it's probably going to be even more and more. And
you want to get a pool going?
You can't beat it. You can't get around it. The whole death thing. You can try and talk. Everybody's going to die. Our days are numbered, but still, when it happens, it's like, no way. So I don't know. I'm glad at least we all get to see each other. We haven't seen each other in a while, and it gives us an excuse to get together. Too bad Steve can't be here with us, but if Steve was here with us, we wouldn't be here. So anyway, good to see everybody.
Hi everyone, I'm Dave Kleinfeld. Met Steve. We were playing baseball together. It was probably 1976. I was about 12. He was 11, and we became friends. And I've heard the theme tonight. Everybody got their love of music or their appreciation of music from Steve, and I certainly did as well. Played in bands together, like I said, baseball. We had some shenanigans, skateboarding, what have you. And then when I became about 17 and he was about 16, our lives kind of separated. Not because we had an argument, it was that normal course of life. We were all growing up, still finding our way. I got a job, and it just took me a different direction than what Steve was. He was always a friend and always had fond memories, and we connected recently, I'd say about 5 years ago on Facebook. We got to chat via instant messages, and then when I was in Nashville, I got to have lunch with him. So that was a special day, and I got to bring him a whole bunch of slides and negatives and pictures that I took of him when we were skateboarding.
We were about 14. A couple of good, funny stories. He was with me the first time we were both ever stopped by the police. We were skateboarding from my house to his house, which was just around the corner from each other. And he was carrying a telephone, an old rotary telephone that I had gotten from my grandma's house. He wanted to take it apart to see what was inside, see how it worked. And so the cops saw us skateboarding down the street, saw us, stopped us, talked to us, and ultimately let us go. Leads me to you talk about what a brilliant mind he had, naturally gifted in that way. He made a telephone out of a light switch, a speaker microphone, and a guitar amp that we had trouble dialing much more than, say, information 411, because you would just flip the light switch to make the pulse on the phone, and that would, and you have a pause, the natural pause would be the pause between the numbers. So we would use the light switch, and he made a telephone. That's just one kind of neat example of how his mind worked. Skateboarding through the neighborhood, getting colored lights for his light board when we were in the band, and putting together a light board. The statute's gone by then, we can't talk about that. Sitting on the front on his driveway talking about guitarists and how he was unsure this new guy, Eddie Van Halen, would ever be as good as Jimi Hendrix. Stanley Clark, he introduced me into the bass and Stanley Clark, and he talked about how he recorded Stanley, and that was an early influence of his as well. So I'm fortunate that we got to reconnect in a later time, and just fortunate that he was part of the life. So thank you all for listening to me ramble on.
Anybody else who'd like to say it? Oh, please.
I don't know if it goes on to my brother, because he's my rock. I'm Laura Michael. Davey was good friends with Steve, and I wasn't really I knew Steve was always around. He always knew I was around, evidently, I found out later. And he was real impressed with my gymnastics. I was a gymnast, and he would talk about that. About 7 years ago, we reconnected on Facebook. And then we talked on the phone, and it sounds like he spent a lot of time on the phone, because what I'm hearing is I was talking to Steve every day. I thought I was special. Guess not. No, I know I was special. I love Steve. I could say I love Steve deeply. I'm standing up and talking today because I don't want to regret not saying something tonight about Steve, because my biggest regret in my life pretty much is that he begged me to come to him in Nashville, and I always had an excuse. No, I have to work. No, I can't do it. And we've been talking for 7 years. It wasn't always every day, but for the last 2.5 years about, Steve became alone, but not really alone, but alone. And we talked at least 3 times a day, and then we were always texting. He made me laugh like no one could make me laugh. I remember a couple years ago at one of our family functions, I think he texted my brother and said, "You know, I'm going to marry your sister someday." Remember that? And I'm telling Dave, "Can you tell him I'm not ready for something like that?" You know, stuff like that. And one of the things that kept me from, this is kind of weird, I'm the only girl talking about Steve, aside from, of course, his beautiful ex-wife, is that I had a problem. I was afraid I wasn't good enough. I wasn't the rock star girl that would come, and I was afraid he'd reject me. You know, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not good enough, whatever. Because look at the man, you know, Steve is the man. But I love Steve, and Steve loved me. And we were very open about that on the phone. Kind of our secret a little bit. I held on to that. We live completely different lifestyles. I work with people in mental health and substance abuse, and we lost our folks last year, 11 days apart. My dad, he had a nickname for my father, who he loved, called him the coach. He was his coach, my dad. He very much looked up to our father, and he loved him. And the thing I want to talk about with Steve is the side that I don't know. I know that we all know this. We all know this. But what I knew the most is his sensitive side, his loving side, his. He talked about matters of the heart with me. And when my parents died, he cried with me, and he cried for a long time. And we would sit on the phone and we'd watch Frasier while on the phone. And he would listen to me cry. Every night I would walk my dog past his house because I was taking care of my parents until they died. I was living in the house. For the last 2.5 years, I was blessed to be with them. And he was stoked about that I was there. And I'm walking by your house, and I'd take photos, and every night we'd talk for hours, and he was one of those guys that when I would start talking about my sadness, and I really fell apart when my mom and dad died, in a way that I didn't anticipate. I had to take a leave of absence from work. I was homebound. I'm going to be honest, like Anna said, I'm just going to lay it all out there. I needed treatment. I stopped eating. I couldn't function. I couldn't get out of bed. And he would, like all of you, push me. And I could easily say that I pushed everyone away. I didn't want anyone to help me. My parents died, and I left work, which those two things were defining me. And Steve saved my life, most assuredly. If I didn't answer the phone, he would call and call and call and text and text and text. We sent songs to each other at least twice a week, so I have like a playlist on Spotify I call Werbelow this. I called him Werbelow. He had lots of nicknames for me. It's about at least 60 songs, and we didn't want to say how we felt, so we sent music to each other. The last song he sent me, he was in the hospital, and he sent me a song. He sent me a song which was really weird, called In Loving Memory. And I didn't know why, but I did know, and a lot of people who I talked to about Steve, I did know how sick he was, and I did know how rare this thing he had was. He had me on speakerphone when he went to the hospitals, and I'm sorry, and I know this is a celebration, but I need you to know this. Like I said, I don't want to regret not talking about this. I did know how serious this was. And when I called people that he told me to call if something happened, some of them said, he told them it was just a procedure. I'll be back, in a couple days, no big deal. It's nothing. And we all, he's so gritty. He came back from life from the stroke, He's not the guy that dies. This is not Steve. And he wasn't expecting that this would happen. No way. So this song, In Loving Memory, when he sent it to me, it obviously occurred to him that there's a likelihood that we're gonna wanna hear this song. I'm not gonna read it to you or play it or whatever, but it basically talks about what he wants us to think about missing him, and what it's going to be like maybe without him, and how much he loved us, and how much we love him. And I thought that was odd, really odd. And and at 6 o'clock in the morning, I set my alarm for 4 a.m. the morning of his surgery. I talked about the night before, we were trying to have a conversation to cheer him up, so I was looking at houses in Tennessee. He was showing me how I could afford a house there. And we were looking at pictures, it was a believable thought in my mind. I was gonna go there. So at 6 a.m., at 4 my time, I set my alarm, and he was going into surgery. And we told him, I love you, we're gonna see each other, this is it, you're gonna come, you're gonna see Matt, you're gonna see your grandson, and I'm gonna come there and we're gonna have this life that we've been talking about for so long. And I didn't think this was gonna happen. And I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. And I'm still shocked, and I know I'm in shock. But the thing that stands out the most to me is when everyone else in my life, I would not allow close to me. Steve, and Steve, you know this. You know everything about me. He knows everything about me, this girl. I told him he was sick, and he understood. I don't know why we clicked so well, but we were on the same frequency. And like all of you, I pick up my phone and I need to talk to him. And after he died, the next day, I feel like he resumed inside me. His energy, that work ethic of I work 7 days a week, and the way that he did it was incredible, and I thought I would never get out of my parents' house. I couldn't. My brother will tell you, he's been begging me, come on, get your shit together, let's go, we gotta sell the house, let's go. Steve was like, you gotta get out of that house, you gotta get out, you gotta get out, you gotta get up, walk, get out, drive, do something. And for some reason, his gift to me was, I got something happen, and I've moved. In the time he passed, I signed a lease, I found a house, signed a lease, packed the house, and moved. And I only can say, it's Steve. He came to me, and I got his energy, and I got his drive, and he pushed me. And if it wasn't for him, and all those conversations, and everything that he gave me, even by phone, I would not be standing here. I'd be in my bed still, watching TV, waiting for something. And I guess this was it. And he saved my life, most assuredly. And I love him. And I love the fact that I get to meet his family finally. Thank you for allowing me to share that part of him. He was the most amazing friend, man, person I've ever known. So, besides my brother.
Does anybody else have anything else?
Yes. My
Pete, please.
My story's kind of short and sweet about Steve.
Pete and I work with Steve at O'Neill as well.
And
That
my
was
brother.
Tom.
And this was probably 1988. I went to his house on Lisette, and he's in the garage doing freaking pull-ups on goddamn popsicle sticks. And I'm going, what the hell are you doing? I go, I'm looking, and I'm not seeing anything. All I see is him going like this on the side of this thing, doing like 20, 30 pull-ups. And I'm like, holy crap. And then I'm in the garage, looking at this little bed thing he's got. And I go, so what's that? He goes, oh, that's my portaledge bed that I use when I'm rock climbing. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, we sleep up there. I go, what do you mean you sleep up there? He goes, oh, no, you nail it in and you get in and I go, so where the hell do you crap? And he goes, we crap in a jar and we carry it with us. I go, what? You carry it with you? Okay, man, this is just getting crazy for me. I don't know about this rock climbing crap for me. It's just not my thing, you know? Plus, I'm too big to frickin' pull my ass up on a popsicle stick. You know? But Werbelow, man, he was such a good guy. He was so, you know, I just talked to him in May, and we were talking fucking Trump. Trump and Biden, and you know, and I just finally said to him, I go, hey, Werbelow, I'm not even really into this political crap. And he goes, I'm not either. I go, you've been getting people's goats on the freaking internet, man. I go, really? And he goes, yeah, but don't say anything. And I was good with it, you know. But that's kind of my story, and you know, I love the guy. He was a good man, and he will be missed by all, definitely. Yeah. No worries.
Anybody else?
How about a nickname?
Yeah, right.
We all got nicknames.
Yeah, let's
I
hear
thought
it.
your name was Cam.
You've got two or three.
I thought your name was Cam for the longest time. I'm Bill, neighbor, Vermont Hills. I lived with Steve in that Reseda house with a mirror in the back and a navel. Steve called me Meister. And he went for short, he called me ND. He named me after a cheap beer. Meister. So we call him Meister. That's my name.
I know. And Billy has many stories. That was a quick one, but I mean, he lived with Steve for multiple years, and as we all have. I mean, and I think we're all gonna, after this is over. And I know it's a little bit late, and it is what it is. But I'm sure we're all gonna go out and maybe go to a bar or restaurant after this. But we're all gonna talk about the great times that we all enjoyed with Steve. And I don't think there's one person who said, "Gee, I have no story about Steve." What? I nothing. Every person here, whether you went to get gas with him, or you went rock climbing with him, or went to a concert with him, and I've got 3 great concert stories, but that's a different deal. He was always living life, and he was supporting you. And there was one thing that I just want to say: when my brother's car was stolen in front of my house, and then it was returned. I came back to my house a month later, and my brother's car's in front of my house. And I'm like, what do? I came home from school, and I got in the car. I'm like, this is my brother's car. And I'm like, what do I do? So I ran inside the house, and I called Steve, and I go, dude, what should I do? My brother's car that was stolen is back. And he goes, go sit in it and flatten the tires. And I did that. I ran outside and was going to go do that, and they stole it again. And Steve came back within like 3 minutes from Lizette down Woodley, and he was just like standing in front of my house looking at these 3 guys who were looking at him and me, and I'm just standing like an idiot. And he's just like, fuck you guys, man. I know who you guys are. I know you stole the car. I'm not gonna forget it. You're not gonna forget it. And that was his mindset if you were his buddy. All the time. And he did that to me 3 times. And if anybody wants to hear about it, I'll tell you later. But that was like his mentality. If you were his buddy, he was on your side, bam. And I loved it. And there were so many things just said in the last few minutes. I'll make it quick. The garage studio that he built in his studio in Woodland Hills in that house. Many people don't know this, but I went by there a few years after Steve and Linda left, and I just wanted to see what was going on there. And I talked to the owner. And they couldn't even get that studio out of the garage. It was so well built. This thing was so ensconced in their garage and so well built, it was not coming out. I mean, it was a big deal. It cost them more money to get it out than it was worth. It was incredible. But it was a big deal. But the other thing that I want to say about Steve is a couple times when my brother went into the Navy, and my brother, left me, not intentionally, but my brother left me. And he left his best buddy. And we both missed my brother. And several times he would drive down to Woodley, where I lived, to pick me up, Woodley and Chatsworth, and just take him back to his garage and hang out. Not just do anything at all, just to chit chat and watch him solder things. Which we all know he loves soldering and cables and whatever else. But he just, he didn't want to be alone, but he knew that I didn't want to be alone. And the fact that he understood that was a pretty cool thing. Nicknames, everybody got them from Steve. We all have nicknames for him. I had a lot of good ones, and I had a lot of ones that I would tell him when I was pissed off at him. But nicknames are somebody you give, a nickname is something that you give to somebody when you care about them. When you're fighting with somebody, you don't fight with somebody you don't care about. It's not worth your time. So when you fight with somebody or you're arguing with somebody and you're really into it, it means you care about them and you appreciate them and you love them or enjoy them in your life. And if you argue with somebody or give somebody a nickname, that means they matter. And Steve gave a lot of nicknames to a lot of people in this room because they mattered to him. And we all had nicknames for him, and he mattered to us. Lastly, two things I just want to say, and I'm sorry. I was really bummed to hear that he passed away, like everybody. Initially, it was because I heard that he was suffering 6 months ago when he had chest pain. And I talked to my brother all the time, and I'm not upset at him at all. But I didn't know he was going in for surgery, and a lot of people in this room did, and I didn't know that. I wish I would have called him, but I didn't know. So, stay in touch with your friends. I'm not all high and mighty, I'm just talking from my experience. Stay in touch with your friends, stay in touch with your family, because we never know, and they matter, and they're important. When I found out that he passed away, I was in my front yard with my boy, and we were playing wiffle ball. And I have this big plant that I got for free a year ago. It was this great sago palm, and I planted it for my gardener, and it was great, and it died immediately. He's like, oh, don't worry about it. It dies, but give it a year, maybe 9 months, but it's gonna come back. A year and a half later, it's still just this big nasty thing in my front lawn that I've actually had people come by and say, are you ever gonna cut that down? I'm like, fuck you, man. Get the fuck out of here. I'm sorry to cuss, but I mean, picture somebody walking by your house and saying, you're gonna cut that down? You gonna change your hairstyle? But I was really bummed about it, but whatever. And my gardener kept saying, it's gonna come back, and it just never did. And when I heard that Steve had passed away, I was really bummed, because Carrie came out, and she's like, your brother's been trying to get a hold of you. And I was bummed. I was playing with both of my brother. With my son. And I looked at the sago palm, and there was 3 sprouts coming out of the bottom. And that plant is now Steve. So Steve meant a lot to me. I know it meant a lot to you for a variety of reasons, whether you work with him, whether you're his family, whether you were his childhood friends in the Lizette. There was great times across the board. And every story that I hear from everybody in this room that I've talked to in the last month and that I've known for my whole life is always a great story. It's never like, oh man, Steve was a jerk, or this happened and that didn't work out. It was always fun and uplifting and enjoyable. And that's what I think about Steve, is that, dude, he was a positive guy. He was always like, oh sure, I'll help you. I'll help you with your 510. I'll help you, Kurt, with your stupid, sound system you're trying to put in the Mitsubishi 3000 that you shouldn't even know anyways as a lane car. That's unreal. He was always he would always help me no matter what I wanted to do, even if it was dumb. He'd tell me I'm dumb, but he'd still help me. And he was there for you. I don't think anybody can say Steve wasn't there for me. He blew me off. No, he wasn't there. He was always there. And I love the fact. I'm sorry, what?
Except Robert, when he goes to jail.
Oh. But this is my last comment. I have a fraternity brother who passed away at the age of 34. And he had 100 fraternity brothers at his funeral. Huge thing. in Beverly Hills. I was there. He had 3 people, 3, say something about him at his funeral. We had a lot more than 3 people here tonight talk a lot more about Steve than I heard at that funeral. I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying that Steve had a huge impact, and I think we all understand that. Let's realize it, and let's celebrate the fact that Steve lived his life. It's not the amount of years on the earth, but it's what you do with those years, and he crushed it. God bless. And lastly, let's all go out and have fun tonight. If you guys want to go to across the street, Twisted Oak, great bar, great food if you're still hungry. If you